Hey guys, Flashing Conversations here, day 5. Sorry for missing the past 2 days. I was busy with some stuff, but today we're going to be talking about surviving, thriving in the unknown, and what it means to really do that. I just want to start off with a quote. Every human's worst enemy, every human's worst fear. Simultaneously, every human's greatest source of motivation is not knowing. And I'll talk about that a little bit later. I just thought that was pretty interesting. Just to start, um, on a side note, uh, there was this interesting philosophy. There's context behind why I want to talk about this today. There's interesting philosophy, uh, tabula rasa philosophy, I believe. That's like clean slate ideology or something. That sort of hypothesizes that everyone, in short, and I'm definitely not getting the entire idea right, but in short, every human is born knowing nothing, born as a clean slate, and they learn everything. And whether or not I agree with that 100% is up in the air. Maybe I'll talk about it later for another day. But I do definitely agree with some of it. I agree with the sentiment that children are sponges, and the stuff that we are born with, are born knowing, is very little, if anything. So just going with that idea, as as we grow from infants to adolescents to teenagers to adults, um, we take in information and we learn from experience, or we're taught things, essentially, for lack of a better word, things that allow us to create our perception of the world. It allows us to turn the nothingness. I wouldn't even define prior to knowing unknown. I'd just call it nothingness, but it allows us to turn nothingness into the known. And these are not concepts like ego, superego, whatever, like the known, nothingness, unknown. It's just for sake of clarity. But essentially, we are able to create an idea of how the world functions, relative to our experiences and the things that we learn. And everyone learns different things growing up. Everyone is taught different things, from school, from your parents, taught different cultural values, has different experiences due to socioeconomic difference, racial difference, etc. So everyone learns different things, for lack of a better term, leading us to create different perceptions of reality, of the world that we live in. I think this is pretty accepted as a truth. We know that everyone has gone through something different that causes them to see a certain aspect of the world a different way or whatever. And of course, things like generational trauma, whatever, can arise from this. But on a separate note, and a conclusive note at that, this difference is what is this difference is what makes us human. Um, these different perceptions that we have. If everyone perceived the world in the same exact way, there would be no discourse or anything really. Um, Also, like, perceive something as beneficial, something as detrimental, etc., then it would be pretty boring, I guess. The world would be. But in perceiving the world differently, we're allowed to have discourse and differing perspectives on certain issues, certain systems within the world. And all of this is provided by the fact that at a certain point in time, we have some sort of certainty within our perception of the world. We have some sort of conclusivity in with what we see as the truth. The rate in which we take in information and we learn from others and we learn from our experiences decreases, and we start to know more and we start to have more definites. But I would argue that even in having these quote unquote definites and knowing more, we can only ever know fully in part. Know fully in part. We can only ever know in part. I think this is because even when we express what we quote unquote know as a truth, and this is exempt from the actual, like, things that are like postulates, like 100% true all the time. Like eating helps us. Yes, eating will help us every single time. But once we start to express what we know to be true, we're still kind of testing it. So it's sort of like a small mini hypothesis. Like, if I say this, if I do this, will it warrant this reaction, or will it garner this response? In our minds, we can be nearly certain that it will do that. Know with a high percent of certainty that a certain action will warrant a certain response, but nonetheless, we still test to see the validity of our of our created truth. And I know this is true because we can anticipate we anticipate a response that is contrary to what we want to happen. And when we do receive a surprising response, we adjust accordingly, like an experiment almost. So in that way, we're always learning what's more effective to garner what we want to occur. So it brings up the question of what does it mean for something to be known? I think it the definition falls in line of expecting an outcome and receiving said outcome by doing a certain action. So in doing that, you fully know something. And when it comes to things like human beings and animals, I feel like this can never really be. Like when you boil water, we know that if you boil water to 100 degrees Celsius, it will boil. That's the boiling point of water. It falls in line with the logic of the earth. But there's something about living beings um, that adds variation to the truth, the logic, way the world works, if you will. Living things can only ever be known in part. And maybe I should say complex living things, but I can't. I'm not that well versed in biology yet to really conclude on what degree of living um, things can be fully known. But something about the biological composition of animals, human beings, things in the animal kingdom, in the human race, um, only allow for us to be known in part. We can never be fully known. No one can ever fully anticipate something that we do and have it be true 100% of time, falling outside the logic of the universe. So I guess the conclusion that was arrived is that nothing in the living world is really ever fully known. And of course, there's a scale on which things can be known with certainty versus things that are known with less certainty. But I guess I would define these things as the unknown. The things that we can never fully 100% conclude, say that we know, things that we can only know in part, things that fall outside of the earth, the logic of the earth. So if everything that is unknown, or if everything that we know in part is unknown, what are we left to do with the unknown? And there are different philosophical responses to this. Like, if I were to take a stoic-esque response, it would be something like you can only control what you can control, and you just leave the rest to the wind. So just set your mind and focus on the things that you. So just set your mind on the things that you want for yourself, and anything that's out of your control, don't expend any unnecessary energy on it. That's interesting. And I could take like an existentialist response and something like, we should all give into the immediate pleasures and the things that we know make us feel good. Um, because thinking about things that we can never truly know is pointless. So let's just make our lives more simple in what we were meant to do, yada yada yada, whatever. And that's also interesting, and these are definitely approaches that people take in society, regardless of whether or not they know the philosophies. They're definitely responses to this situation. So there's this question of what do we do? Um, and while we can't fully know a human being on an individual level, we can definitely conclude things about society and the human race. We know that humans produce a lot more negative things than positive things within our lifetime. We know that as we grow in age, life becomes more difficult, and the trials and tribulations that we experience become harder as well. So, keeping all this in mind, and of course, we know how brutal and ugly the world is as a result of us existing. So, just keeping all this in mind, I feel like rationally we should set our hearts on love, on taking in negativity and turning it into positivity. We should instill hope into others and strive to improve the quality of life for other people. And so, regardless of how we grew up or how we took in the things that we've learned and were taught to create our existing perception of the world, and regardless of the fact that the only things that we can know for certain are what's true of the earth, if we set our minds on helping others, putting others before ourselves,
turning negativity that we receive into positivity, we can help other people thrive within the unknown. That is being human. So, just going back to the quote that I started with, every human's worst enemy, uh, simultaneously, every human's greatest source of motivation is not knowing. The pursuit for knowing the validity of the hypothesis we create on person to person from in society. I attribute that quality to some of the worst things that we can come to experience. But on the other hand, in acknowledging this pursuit, this innate curiosity, and the potential destructive quality of this curiosity, we can channel it into something positive to help others. Yeah, that's day 5. It was a bit all over the place. I hope you guys are able to follow. Yeah. See you guys later.